What a great group tonight. A lot of new faces, which is really fun to see, and many familiar faces. I'm Nancy Geyer. I'm the Executive Director and CEO of the Museum of Boulder. And again, welcome to our Boulder Conversations with Extraordinary People series. We're actually in our 8th year of this series, and there are so many extraordinary people in Boulder that we can just go on forever with this. But tonight we're in for a real treat because we have 2 extraordinary people here tonight. I wanted to share just a little bit. Many of you know, some of you may not know, but that the Boulder History Museum a couple of years ago purchased the Masonic Lodge, which is at Broadway and Pine Street. And we are currently renovating that building into the new Museum of Boulder. If you've driven or walked by there, you'll see all of the work going on. We are so thrilled that we are really close to opening this new museum. The construction will be completed in early February. We will be moving in February and March and start programming there. So actually, either in March or April, this series will start in our new building, which we're really excited about. And we will have a grand opening in May with some great exhibits in that building. It's going to be a wonderful community center, a place where we will share the stories of Boulder, both the early history of our community as well as the science and technology, the sports and natural foods, everything that Boulder has come to be known for in this new museum. And we will bring traveling exhibits from other places to this building, as well as partner with community groups and really create a community center in Boulder, just 2 blocks from the Pearl Street Mall, which is awesome. In addition, there will be actually a center for children, for young children, a children's museum in the lower level of the building. So for infants up through about 6 or 7 years old, Boulder hasn't had a children's museum in many years, so we will have that opportunity as well. We're still raising money. We had some good news this past week with our fundraising, but we're still raising money. We would love for your support. We would love to share more information about our plans, so please contact us. We can give you hard hat tours. We can show you our plans. But this really and truly is a community museum, and we want all of the community to be involved in the creation of this museum. We couldn't do programs like this tonight without the support of the community, and we do have some wonderful signature sponsors for our series this year, and they are First National Bank, Flatirons Bank, and Tebow Properties. So please give a big round of applause for those companies. And in addition, the amazing food that we have tonight is provided by the Gourmet Kitchen. And so I'd like to thank them for providing the food. And Hazel's Beverage World provided the wine that you're enjoying tonight. So again, we really rely on the support of local businesses for our efforts, and these particular businesses are very supportive of local nonprofits, so thanks so much to them. So tonight our program is a little bit different if you have been to some of our other Boulder Conversations before, and I'm really excited about it, but as I said, we have 2 extraordinary people. And so Patty Limerick will be interviewing Bill Reynolds in our program tonight. What I will do is give you a little bit of information about each of them, and then you're going to learn a whole lot more about Bill. But I'll start with Patty. I think many of you know Patty. Patty Limerick is the faculty director and chair of the board of the Center of the American West at CU, where she's also a professor of history. She has dedicated her career to bridging the gap between academics and the general public, and to demonstrating the benefits of applying historical perspective to contemporary dilemmas and conflicts. In January 2016, Patty became the Colorado State Historian. She has received numerous awards and honors recognizing the impact of her scholarship and her commitment to teaching, including the MacArthur Fellowship and the Hazel Barnes Prize from the University of Colorado. Patty has served as president of several professional organizations, advised documentary and film projects, and done 3 tours as a Pulitzer Prize jurist. She also regularly engages the public on op-ed pages of local and national newspapers. So, our first extraordinary person. And then Bill. Bill Reynolds, a Boulder native, has the good fortune and health to ride his bike every day to his office in downtown Boulder. Bill graduated, and as he wrote, without distinction, from the University of Colorado with a degree in business. After college, he served as a naval officer aboard the USS Bennington. He formed the Reynolds and Company in 1966 after selling houses in Denver for more realty. His company sold residential real estate in Aspen, of course, between powder days and hanging out at the Red Onion. Over the ensuing years, the Reynolds companies have been involved in developing and owning over 3 million square feet of commercial properties. Currently, the Reynolds properties in downtown Boulder total 600,000 square feet, and their management portfolio contains 4 million square feet and 440 tenants. Bill has served as a board member for numerous Boulder companies and nonprofit organizations. He particularly enjoyed serving as vice chair of Patty Limerick Center of the American West and remains on the board of directors. He is proud of the changes he's made to Fort Collins and his home city of Boulder. He smiles and feels good to see his developments being used profitably and enjoyably by others. Bill and his wife of 49 years, Jane, who is here, and dog, Thomas Jefferson, reside in Boulder along with their 3 children and 5 grandchildren. Please welcome Patty Limerick and Bill Reynolds.
Thank you very much. I think in Western films, the sidekick is an under-celebrated character. And so I actually have a gift for that. And I shall be performing as sidekick here, which is a true honor and actually really a joy. We may or may not tell the story about the first time we really might have been in each other's presence in the same room at the same time, but we owe the excellent opportunity to get to know each other to Dick Lamb, who gave a rather disappointing performance in a debate with me just because he was...
He lost the debate, as everybody does with you, Patty.
No? It just was an interesting moment. He, when I would bring up an issue that I thought... I should not have said this, it's being recorded, for heaven's sake. I love Dick Lamb. I'm very fond of Dick Lamb. I totally am. And I felt that night, when I said something that challenged some logic, he just said, "Dirty politics, Patty." And I thought, I don't think that was dirty politics. I thought it was kind of clean logic. I didn't think it was that. So Dick, wherever you are, if you're watching this, I'm very fond of you and Dottie. And that saying dirty politics, that didn't make sense to me. So one thing led to another, and that gave us the occasion to have an interesting conversation about how we might have discussions and debates in more productive ways, and that led to Bill's involvement with the center. So that was really good. We made a choice, we conspired on this, that we would not get overly spiffed up for tonight, because we have, at the risk of, I'm sure there's nothing embarrassing about this, that we had a meeting with an important figure in Denver a number of years ago, and we went to the University Club in Denver, and
I was recruited by you, Patty, to try to find a new member, and Dick invited us to the University Club. Ever been to the University Club? It's
in Denver.
It's well, I guess pardon me, but I didn't. Anyhow, I wore my jeans at this, and after I was seated. And here we're recruiting
Don Bain.
Don Bain, who ran for the mayor.
Yeah.
That's right.
Uh-huh.
So we're recruiting a big wig in Denver, and this clown shows up in his jeans and his cowboy boots, but they were pressed, and I had taken a shower. anyhow, the maitre d' came up. We don't allow jeans. So what was I to do? Well, they put us in the boardroom. So it turned out beautifully, and Don joined, and
It's
and
a all's
so-
well that ends well story.
So
And-
I embarrassed my wife as usual.
That is its own demonstration of affection that many of us have performed in that relationship. So that's a tribute and an inspiration to us that you've been covering that ground. So I'm going to tell you what we're going to do is we're going to start with some slides, and these are slides that Bill selected and sent to us, and there are many opportunities for conversation with those slides. We'll go through. There's about 20 of those, and then we will go to some bigger picture matters of how we live on the earth and how we see ourselves over time and what legacies we want to leave after we've moved on. So we'll go to that bigger, deeper picture. Should that become too deep, we have questions like, what was it like managing Tulagis? Should we practice on that one?
Well, you want me to talk about Tulagis? All right.
Some people,
well,
I don't know, is there anyone in the room who could bear to embarrass themselves by saying they don't know what Tulagis was? Oh, okay, already. Oh, okay. Well, I'll start there. Tell them.
Well, after I sold real estate for Bill Moore in Denver, I got the opportunity to sell real estate in Snowmass. So it's a long. You can see, Patty. I'll have to lead up to Tulagis.
I think that's better because you go to Tulagis too fast. That's too fast. You don't want to do that. You don't want to. You want to move. Those of you, sorry, I hope I didn't embarrass anyone by asking you to admit that you didn't know. You're going to be quite proud of yourself for not knowing by the time we're through with this, I think so.
Well, anyhow, I got the opportunity to go to Snowmass, and I sold real estate in Snowmass, and I did well. I made some money. I have to admit, I made about 30 grand, and in the late 60s, I mean, that was a lot of money, and I was a hot shit, I thought.
Were you that?
At least in my mind, I was. Well, I came down, and one of my fast-talking friends, and I thought, my gosh, now we have all of this money. We're going to buy Tulagis, which we'd done a little
Research.
little
I think that would be
imbibing
called.
in during.
That would be called research, I think.
Research.
Yeah, market research is what
Okay.
that is.
Well, needless to say that we timed it perfectly because beer sales were going this way, pot sales were going this way, so our profits all went up in smoke. So anyhow, I went from a positive net worth to a negative net worth in a very short period of time, where I had to go to our local banker, Paul Dawson, and I said, Paul, I don't have the money. And so in those days, you knew your banker, and I said, I'll pay you, but I can't do it right now. I have to pay you over time. So anyhow, that's my lesson on Tulagis. And people have often asked me, what's the best deal you ever made? And I would relate the Tulagi story because I made all of the mistakes one can make, but I made them early where I could still recover. So anyhow, I can go all through those lessons, but
Well, I actually feel that's the interesting thing, that we get into deep areas there because, in fact, that is something that Bill has been very clear about saying in some of his written reflections, that failure that's not anything to put your tail between your legs and give up. That's to say, well, that was an incredible opportunity, and now I have learned this and that and the other. So that's a very consistent and deep life lesson, and I didn't quite know that the Tulagi story would get us into the depth that fast. The depths.
Let's go to the skiing now.
Well,
can
let's we have just one before we leave Tulagis, which was I got here in 1984, and I did know that was a well, you weren't taking your life in your hands or anything like that, but it was a place where vigorous young male students were probably more comfortable than I was ever going to be in that zone. And many
You didn't like Flash Cadillac?
well, maybe I didn't even know enough to not, or to what.
Okay.
So I want to know just a few words about the view of human nature that managing a place like Tulagi's might give a person.
Obviously, I didn't know shit.
That's what you got.
And so, no, I was the investor and have managed it. I would stay up at night and write out on the yellow pages all the things I thought he ought to do. But, you know, if you're going to be in a cash business, you better be there at the door collecting the cash. We had an opportunity to get out early. You got me talking early about Tulagi's, but
Well, we'll be moving soon.
we had an opportunity to get out early, and we would have lost a little bit of money. Hell no, we sat around a table. I remember there were 4 of us smart investors said, oh, we can't sell it for this. We're going to lose a little bit of money. We got to get our investment out. Well, you know, a year later, we lost a lot of money. So your first loss is your best loss. So
That's right. That's the great phrase you've used. Yeah. Okay. So we do have these slides. Who are those people?
well, that's, of course, one of the biggest influences in Boulder in my life, and that's my mother,
Which
who
one?
lived
Which
to be
one?
101, and she's in the purple and blue. That was her 100th birthday.
Wow. Wow.
And that's Mary Ann Parsons, a very dear friend.
So you were a World War II baby, but unlikely to have...
All right, 1938, is that's what you're after?
Yes, I guess that's right. So,
Okay.
so World War II stories would be stories that you would hear later growing up, that people would say things that had gone on in your childhood that had been happening that you
I remember saying, you know, we squashed our cans, we did all these things. Mr. Jewell picked up our garbage. All of those things were vivid in my memory of growing up.
That was a really different Boulder, and we'll be getting to that. Because I guess that's the largest framework for the evening. Maybe I should have just said this at the start. To the changes over your lifetime in this city are almost more than the human mind can assemble. It's such a dramatic change, and it is such a remarkable part of our evening together is that you were one of the forces in the changes. So to be in a situation, to be, I guess it's called participant observer, but it's a lot more than that. So at some point, we'll want to get back to thinking about what Boulder was like. What were your first memories of downtown? I guess what I'm really asking is, when did you think, oh, this is where I live? This is Boulder. Other children are sad and they live in New York City. And so it's just...
Patty, you stumped me on that one.
Well, okay, so actually we'll keep moving along through our slides because we have quite a few of them. That's quite a cast of characters there.
Well, yeah, that's my wife's family in Flint, Michigan. That's where Jane is from. And you talk about, I guess getting back to your other question is when you go to Flint, Michigan, which formerly was a vibrant, very prosperous community, and I went there some years ago, and to see what has happened to that community when you lose your young people and you lose the jobs, and I guess maybe that comes back to the answer I should give is that I was able to can see what happens in a place like Flint, and
And we will get to talking about some of the, about Hernando De Soto, and so we'll get to the issues about what could help a community like that as well. So, okay, so, and is it possible that, oops, there we are.
Who's that dude? That's me. That's me with a dark mustache and my glasses.
What was the process that led to the choice of those glasses?
Well, that's what my wife asks me when I get dressed every day.
Well, somewhere in these notes we get to the matter of humor and how important humor is, but I don't really know that we need to spend much time on that because we have pretty well established that as a factor. Okay, well, we'll keep, and roughly what age would we have?
Probably 35.
35, so, and which career phase then is that of 35?
That's probably begging for Talagi's money.
I wondered. It's got a sort of pleading look around the eyes there. That's, you could be part of that. Okay, so now we're going, this is not a chronological march through time and history. We're zipping around a little bit, but now we're getting to the really, really important dimension of our companion's character here, the outdoors, and the importance of the outdoors and the engagement with the outdoors. So I have to assume that you gave us that because it was you.
It might have been my buddy, but I wished it was me, right?
Okay. So talk about skiing. When you
Well,
wanted to get out of the Tulagi story, you were pushing me to get to
I've
skiing.
been a skier. Actually, when some of you old timers here, and I see a few of you around, but my uncle had a machine shop on Walnut Street between 8th and 9th. And anyhow, I had some of the first skis. My father took some skis down and he put steel edges on, and on his place up Magnolia, I went skiing at 8 with a little rope tow they made, and so I started skiing at an early age, and then I was able, when I earned some money. This is a heli ski trip that I love to go on.
Mm-hmm.
More.
That's
more. That's British Columbia. That's the Selkirk Mountains.
Huh. Oh, and I'll just announce that one of our themes here is going to be this Bill's deep loyalty to Boulder and total engagement with Boulder and his pleasure and sometimes leaving Boulder and going to other places and then returning. So the capacity to be very rooted in this place and very engaged in other places is a striking aspect. And so here we are in British Columbia. We're going to come back with one particularly wild picture of going to different places. Anyway, so it's not just about skiing and the outdoors. The bicycling thing might even be a bigger thing. I will say when I first got to know Bill, there's many, many things I admire. And I don't know, I think that the capacity to so comfortably wear a handkerchief on his head and to feel no sense of
A do-rag.
Okay. Okay, I will rephrase my remark there, but it's not, there are people that will just say have a precarious sense of themselves who would not be so totally at ease and putting such a silly thing on it, on your head, and just so comfortable, so totally at ease on that. And you do that because your hair will blow in the wind otherwise, is that right?
Oh.
Where's that Dick Lamb now? Okay, yes.
Well, that's a picture in China.
Oh, my goodness.
And so we had a great bike trip across the world. I've been able to all right, I'm going to digress. Nancy, close to where you're building your new museum was the old Boulder Library, a little white building. Remember that, many of you. Well, when I was in high school, I would go down there. I think I was actually in junior high. I go down there with myself, and I loved these adventure books written by Howard Pease, and he wrote about this young man, this young seaman that went across the world in these merchant marines, and I guess the adventure was in me there. Because I loved Todd Moran and Howard Pease and the adventures that he took me through early.
So the Howard Pease is, of course, one of the most admired American writers. And my understanding is that Ernest Hemingway was very bitter that he could never get any attention after the Howard Pease thing hit. So we may need a little bit of help. So was it the same character who went on different adventures, or?
Yes, Todd Moran was
okay.
the character.
I see. Okay.
And believe it or not, if you Google Howard Pease, he does appear, and you can buy
This is good news.
a book now. Believe it or not, but they cost quite a bit now.
Oh.
So, but you're right. He wasn't on the same level as you, for sure.
Never thought to compare myself to Howard Pease, but I'm going to go home. A sleepless night, probably, on that. I don't know how that's going to go. So, but that's a wonderful story because it does have you just thinking, I want to do that kind of stuff. I want to go places. I want to.
Right.
Yeah, that's very cool. And the bicycle thing, did you have one when you were, did you have tiny little wheels and a little training?
I started right off with a Speedo there.
Did you?
Yeah, I drove a bike or rode a bike to school, to junior high and to college, or not to college, no.
No, that wouldn't be cool.
No.
I guess I've always wondered about this because I share with you the bicycle experience where there were no things like fancy gears, and my town had a slope, which really changed the world when you had a bicycle with no cool gears. This town for a bicycle with just one gear? That must have been a...
Well, that's, if you were hot stuff today, you would have a bike with one gear and ride it up over Corona Pass.
Right. So this town, so you didn't have that sense. In my case, I could always, my mood was really determined by whether I was going downhill or uphill. Probably still is, I guess. But okay, well, that's very interesting. So you were not disheartened by the fact that you had to go uphill a lot. No, good, because you just, let's move on here. Let's do that. Now, okay. Now we're on to the big subject here. The other things matter a lot, the bicycling, the skiing, and so on. But this seems to be where the intensity of feeling really comes in. I'll just say that we have quite a number of pictures of fish here. And we'll just start with that. Why did you give me so many pictures of fish?
I didn't expect that question, but Patty, I love fish,
Yes. Well,
and there is something about it's the adventure, it's the stream, it's special to be out in a stream and whipping away, and it's all. I'm a fly fisherman, and so it's a special time for me.
In many ways, the Western central attention to fly fishing, Norman McLean did a lot of that with the river runs through it. But you were in that world long before Norman McLean and Robert Redford got to popularizing it. So how did you learn fly fishing?
Well, I started fly fishing when I was 12. We had the McIntoshes had a place up in Grand Lake, and the Reynolds family went up there, and we went up the North Inlet, and I learned to fish up there. My mother was the fisherman.
Really?
But my father did take me on the first fishing trip, and he couldn't get me off the stream when it got dark. We camped out that one night, I still remember, and I probably got the bug there. But my mother loved to fish, and he didn't. He wanted to be with me, but I took my mother up to Alaska a number of times, and every time she caught a fish, she would squeal. I can still hear her. She would just squeal, and she didn't want to put them back. You know, we fishermen put the fish back so we can catch them again. She didn't want to catch any fish back. She wanted to eat it. So.
Cool. So if there's any stories about any of these particular fish.
You probably, well, that's my dog that went fishing with me for so many years, Treva, my retriever, Treva, and she loved to fish, and I would take her, and she'd sit by the stream, and anyhow, we had great times together. So I suppose that's in Tierra del Fuego, where the wind blows hard and the sea-run browns get very large. You didn't have to do all of these pictures. I just sent you. I said
them.
Pick out a few.
I didn't hear that part, and that I will. So, but it's also true that this was kind of field tested. Studying the American West, there's a lot of young people in that office, and when those slides came in, the young people were just, not that the older people weren't as happy, but it was really the young people saying, you have to use all of those. So I would be very complimented if I were you or one of these fish. I would be complimented by that too. On that, I mean, they really were taken by these, so that's why they're all here. Well, and listen to these people, for heaven's sake. This is really...
That's a golden dorado in Bolivia. So these golden dorado follow the sabala fish. It's a forage fish, and they followed up the little tributaries of the Amazon, and so that was one of the great trips I was on, just because we were in these dugout canoes, and a lot of walking. And when these fish, they heard the little forage fish, and there's a number of these dorado, and they heard them over to the shore and tear into them. It's pretty amazing.
It's really amazing. Wow. Oh, sorry.
That is Bolivia.
That's like a cartoonist or something. It's been that's totally amazing. How much does he weigh?
That's 26 pounds.
Wow.
That's a king salmon on the Dean River in British Columbia.
These are competitors here. These are rivals and
Brooks Falls.
And now we are shifting themes here to the theme is being at home in Boulder and raising children in Boulder and having a most excellent, beyond excellent companion in that enterprise. However, this is one last trip. Those two slides are out of sequence. This is supposed to be, this is an amazing, this was supposed to be back in the going to distant places and so on. So I'm sorry, I've gotten my themes a little bit garbled up here. But anyway, that's a striking photograph. We'll just say that. That was supposed to be next to the big cartoon fish, but now it's over here by itself. So that is a very unpleasant tongue, I'm going to say. That's really...
Oh. So, well, I would think at the top of all of the adventures that I've been able to experience, is the African trip with, I see some of my African trip friends over here, but that was probably to the trip with Woody and Larry and
Cool. Good.
Leslie and Nancy.
So, sorry, we're still off in foreign lands. I did screw up the
Well,
sequence
we're
here, but
jumping
here's
around. That was back to China again.
back to China, okay. Now we are back in this
Well,
territory of the shared enthusiasm for the outdoors and the long-term commitment to living full out. So-
there's nothing that Jane likes better than hiking in our mountains, and that's our dog Belle before Thomas Jefferson. So we did a lot of hiking, and Jane still has her hiking buddies. Colorado mountains are really special to be able to get away, and the wildflowers and the wildlife and just the serene atmosphere of hiking in our Colorado mountains.
So now, we were speaking of the raising of a family in this area, and
That's the 5 grandkids and our 3 children, and Jane and I this summer. And that's Hillary, and that's our daughter, and 3 of the grandkids. They're all 3 there. On one of our biking trip.
and then we're making a shift. But before we do that, we actually have to go back. We're going to stop and keep this beautiful image up here and the shared stories of the outdoors, but we have not got the business founded yet. So we have to go there in order to get to the next slide. So what I wanted to talk about is 1966 and the well, okay, so, sorry. So we're going to talk about that, the founding of the W.W. Reynolds Company, and what was going on in Boulder at that time, because 1966 is the era, the hippies are starting to enter Boulder. Boulder had been quite a conservative town by many meanings of that term, and the hippies are coming in, and it's the troubles on campus and fights and struggles over free speech and war policy and so on, all that's about to happen. It's a funny time, it's an interesting time to create a new business.
Well,
So-
I think
Yeah,
in retrospect, it's the best time. So, because I had to work, I worked 6 days a week, 7 days. The 7th day, we went out and did stuff with the family. But up and down the Front Range, I was scratching for deals. I built my first building in, I believe it was in 1970. Jeff could tell me for sure, but it's been over 40 years. I had the same tenant. I still own the same building. It's an old warehouse on Pearl. A 6,000 square foot plumbing supply warehouse, and I built that building, and that's when it started, and it worked.
So did you create the company in order to build that warehouse? Or
No, I was
sorry.
selling. I remember I was a salesman, but I wanted to do more, and wanted to buy stuff, and I ran across a deal for build-a-suit on this plumbing supply, the N.O. Nelson Company, and so that's what got me started. And I went to the bank, and they loaned me the money.
Well, they knew you from the Tulagis days, so
I
they,
guess so.
they were.
Or
there
a
he is.
different banker.
So, but founding a company, why did you found the company? That's the question.
Well, all right. So that'll get into a little personal thing here, which is what you were digging for anyhow. So after the Navy, I came back, and my father wanted me to work for him. He had bought some real estate, and I went to work for my father. Well, anyhow, I was young and thought I knew more than he did, which I didn't, but I didn't know that, and he knew that, however. So it was time. I made the decision that I couldn't work for him, and that's when I left and sold real estate for Bill Moore. So anyhow, in retrospect now, it was his property, his company, and he had every right to do what he did. I thought he should be doing something differently, so I left.
So founding a company, and the community in which you were in was about to undergo some very tense and trying times. Were those times just something to think about when you came home after a productive day's work, or how did the wild changes in the politics, the comfort, the at ease and predictability of life in Boulder in the last part of the 1960s, how does that intersect with your going into this new business?
Well, I did work up and down the Front Range, and I was scratching for deals. So, and I didn't, I knew what was happening, but I didn't come home and worry about it. I had to get up the next day and try to make a deal.
Yeah.
So I could put, feed the family.
What were your instincts for what was the right deal and what was the deal to not pursue?
Malcolm Gladwell, who now we talk about an author maybe a little above Howard Pease.
He's going up every time you're.
I'm not there, but I'm trying, But Malcolm, in I think I have to remember which book, but he talks about 10,000 hours, and this is what I was doing, was putting my 10,000 hours in, selling real estate, scratching for deals, putting things together, building a warehouse. I was getting I was learning my craft, and I was developing an instinct. Yeah. And I think that's what he says, is after 10,000 hours, you kind of know something. And it's kind of instinctive. So that's I guess an answer to your question.
No, it's a great answer. So the most, I'm not sure this is the right phrasing, but the most notable developments: Table Mesa Shopping Center, Pearl East Business Park, One Boulder Plaza, Colorado Building. Those are that seems like those are the mountains, the mountaintop things. Are there others that should be in there? Or?
Well, I really started out east and put deals together out there. It was too expensive downtown. And again, I relied so much on relationships, partnerships, and Paul Eklund and Art Kelton got me involved when Bank One decided to sell their properties downtown. That's how I became downtown, and they were right, and I shifted my focus then from the less expensive properties that I could afford to some that I had to get more partners and couldn't afford maybe,
So, I guess I'm just thinking for myself, it's hard for me to even ask a question because I have no idea what the process is to do something like One Boulder Plaza. It seems like you spend a lot of time. I have a very silly story about the Boulder City Engineer's Office, which I'll just tell you because that might explain why I'm thinking, how would you ever get this? Jeff Limerick, my late husband, had designed a house, and he was building the house, and he was working in Denver. So he gave me some forms to take to the City Engineer's Office. So I went to this would have been in the early 90s, or 1990, I guess. So I went down to the city building, and the signage, something had gone just fluey with the signage, and so I was walking around with these forms to find the city engineer's office. And I couldn't seem to get there, and so I finally walked into an office, and I said, "Excuse me, I'm looking for the city engineer's office." And the woman at the desk said, "Well, let me find out, and I'll help you." And then she went over and chatted with some people, and she came back and she said, "This is the city engineer's office." So So that was good because that meant I was there. I mean, my only guess is she must have been a temp or something who was I don't know. It was just an interesting moment. So maybe that's the reason why I think, what a process to take an area and give it a whole new structure and a new vitality and a new sense of activity. So is there 7 stages that you go through, or 197 stages, or?
Well, I know where the city engineer's office is.
Well, there you are. That's a huge advantage, really. That's enormous. So.
Well, I have a picture of what might happen, and many stories of properties I got all excited about. I guess I'll tell you about Pearl East. I can't remember the exact date, but this was before Pearl was extended on out to 55th, and the Blackers had this wonderful property, some 40 acres, and I could see they were going to extend Pearl, and I could see, gosh, this really had some wonderful thought. Anyhow, I got a deal with the Blackers, and they carried some money, and John Woodmeyer came in and helped me finance it, and anyhow, I would take people out and explain, look at this great site. This is marvelous. And anyhow, they didn't see what I saw. And I didn't understand it. And I can visualize, or at least I have a certain vision of something that's going to be completed. And I'll bet Jeff had that same thought process too. So,
Yeah.
it's like I put my time in, and I know the market. I know Boulder. I knew Fort Collins. I haven't dealt with them lately, but I had instincts that were right. As far as dealing with the bureaucracy, that's just part of the job. I couldn't deal with what you deal with up on the hill.
Let's not go there. Let's skip that part. But let's go to the wonderful fact that on your website, it says, creating value through cheerful, innovative, and sustainable real estate practices. And I'm grateful for this occasion because I hadn't gone to see the word cheerful until this thing. I thought, I don't think I know of any other business that uses that word for itself. I know ones that would never be qualified to use that word. They're not. They don't say a glum and melancholy dry cleaners. They don't say that, but sometimes they should probably. So, but how did the word cheerful get in there?
Well, I guess it dates back to, I went to hear Tom Peters once, the inspirational speaker, and he got me to put the raging thunder lizard on my card just because of how I interpreted. You can see my mind doesn't work the same as a lot of people.
Yes.
My wife reminds me of that all of the time.
She has her occasions, I think, on that, because I'm not getting the raging thunder lizard. Could we hear?
Well, because I'm getting to my card, Patty. I'm getting there.
Okay, because everybody else understand the raging thunder? No, okay, good. So.
Well, if you came to my office, you would see the most amazing lizard there.
That's right.
And the lizard is there because we're always changing. A lizard changes with the environment. One of the oldest creatures ever, and that lizard changes as the world changes. So that's
cool. Yeah.
That's where I tied that in. But I was getting to the original. My original card said, "Developers of Distinction." Can you imagine anybody dealing with a developer of distinction? Well, anyhow, that's how I looked at it. So So, and my office,
Why did it happen the first time, though? Why did you write that
well,
stupid
because
phrase?
I sat down with the office, and the more normal people in the office
I see. They prevailed.
said, well, we want to be distinctive, right? Well, anyhow, I rewrote this. It got changed a few times, but the word cheerful is my word.
Is that right?
So I thank you for pointing that
Oh,
out.
I love that. I totally love that. The innovative part, I think we do see that. And the word sustainable has that become, I would assume that you have been in parallel relationship to society, in that word just becoming more and more and more in play. And probably practices were in play before the word was in play. So,
Well, it's not sustainable if people don't want it enough to pay you more than you have in it. So you have to have somebody that wants your product and will pay you for it, and that's sustainable. And I'll fail if I build something they don't want.
okay, and then dimensions of, certainly on the website, that has the meaning as well of energy efficiency and of anticipating ways to make.
So that's what our market wants today. Our market is always changing. The offices that we build for our clients today, I hate the word tenants. They're our partners. They're are my clients, and so there tend to be more office.
I never thought, may I
collaborative.
just say that's so interesting. I never thought about that, but like tenant farmer, that's a very subordinate.
It strikes,
Yeah.
and there was a big firm at the Urban Land Institute meeting that changed. They didn't refer to tenants and landlords. I haven't gotten that completely changed, but
And lord is,
it is. I don't like those terms. I like the term partner, client.
it's totally interesting.
So
That Howard Pease, we have underestimated him because this is one of several situations where really Bill has a very wonderful compilation of quotations he treasures, of life principles he's arrived at, and studying that, you really do have a reverence for what is in a word. And for graduating without distinction, as you say, that's quite a thing. Oh, that's so funny. Without distinction, when you were developers of distinction, but you graduated. That's really funny. Well, okay, so we're in a postmodern novel at this point. It's becoming very complicated. But okay, so let me get my bearings again here, but it is that I just want to stand by, that you do experience and explore the resonance of a word, and the word cheerful, or the noticing that tenant and landlord, that sort of saying peasant and aristocrat. It's interesting. That's really a striking.
well, you recall when at the center that we were talking about should humor be in our mission statement, and I felt so strongly
Yes.
that we needed to leave that word in there.
Yeah.
So I guess you're right.
Well, I was trying to think about the future of the center in ways I could say, well, we really don't have to have this, or we really don't have to have that. And I did say it. I think the Center of the American West of the future, the humor thing, that we could probably let that go, or we should let that go. And no. And it's there, and thank heavens it's there. So, and in fact, the Humor Initiative, that's the happiest thing we have.
So now we have the Pickle Award, right?
We do have a pickle award, and that'll be harder to explain than the lizard, I think, if we just go there. So it's really, and we need to get to questions really soon here. So I am now going to go to this image, and this is a writer, Hernando De Soto. He is a Peruvian thinker, economist, visionary, and would you tell us how you met him?
So Hernando, his fame, really, I'm going to come up and again. He wrote The Mystery of Capital, and that was about maybe 12, 14 years ago. And that elevated him to one of the one most influential people. So I got to meet Hernando actually at CSU. My friend David Neenan he spoke at CSU, and as you know, David went up and latched on to Hernando, and we became friends. We went down to Peru. We got invited down to Peru. CSU actually was in the forefront, and we went down on an initiative down there to his offices, the ILD offices. And so I got to know him probably 8 years ago, and then we became friends, David and Hernando and I, and our wives. We met him in New York. We met him in Paris. So we became personal friends. And so when I wanted to set up, well, that's where you're headed. I won't jump. I won't jump in.
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's
Jump,
totally,
just
go.
Jump.
Well,
go.
okay. So we're just going to throw in. This is so self-indulgent, but in Desoto's second or third book, there's a passage that my brother-in-law was reading the book on an airplane and was surprised to see me referred to there. That there's a moment where he refers to historians who've written about different issues that interest him. And so Desoto actually caused my brother-in-law to say, "What are you doing in this book?" He couldn't say that to me because I wasn't on the plane, but so that's a connection that was really striking and interesting to me. So, okay, so now we have, because of your attention to this man's ideas, we have now at the University of Colorado, we have the Hernando De Soto Capital Markets Program. And from the press release, this is a more efficient summary than I was coming up with on my own, but primary to De Soto's scholarly work is the notion that when entrepreneurs lack a legal framework to record property, or to record, report, license, and sell property, as well as to engage in legally enforceable business contracts related to that property, they face a legal limbo depriving them of important incentives to create and share new business innovations with the world. So if people are living in a society where they cannot feel confidence in their property rights, that stands a good chance of being a society troubled by poverty, by failed enterprises, by people dreaming and aspiring and not getting there. So that's a paraphrase, but
Well, and that's Hernando. So maybe I should put in context. I've been fortunate with my partners and with my buildings, and so Jane and I have set up a foundation, and so that's the background here. Is that I believe in Warren Buffett's. I don't want to burden the kids with too much money. I may still lose it all. I'm still doing deals, so But if I don't lose it all, then and Jeff, my partner here, is here to see that I don't, though sometimes he and I don't quite agree. But anyhow, we set up this foundation where most of the money that I will not burden my children with it. It'll go to my foundation. So, would I give it to the university without strings? Hell no.
no, don't do that.
But I have an affinity for the university, and so I loved working with you and set up the programs there, and I've set up the Hernando De Soto initiative that has turned into a successful program. It's a required business course now for all Leeds freshmen. And Hernando, it's named after my friend Hernando, who I'm going to talk to tomorrow. Now, Hernando, I'd throw out names too, since you do that occasionally. So Hernando canceled his call with me last week because he was on on the road to meet with the president of France for a day. So anyhow, I said, I guess we'll postpone it. But anyhow, I'll talk to Hernando tomorrow. But anyhow, Hernando spent his life in third world countries, and if you don't have private property rights, if you don't have the right to own your own stuff, whether it's land or whether it's a building, a house, whether it's a push cart, and how you do that, you have to have the rule of law. And as you pointed out, it has to be recorded and enforceable. And he spent his life saying that that's really the key to poverty in so many of these countries, and that is that there is so much capital that's there if he could unleash it. He calls it dead capital, because you don't have this system of property rights that are recorded, and you could borrow against it, and you could be assured of having your own stuff. And so he's a fascinating man. He spent his life in espousing a formula that I think works and that I wanted to share with young people. He isn't the only author that we study, but it's named after him, and hopefully we'll get him out here someday and talk to him. So.
Right. So we are now. I'm going to claim the last 2 or 3 minutes back for myself at the end, but I am happy to say that I have followed my instructions, and we have a good solid 15 minutes or so for questions from the audience, which was what I was told to do, and I have an uneven record in following instructions, we'll just say that. And I am also have been instructed to say, if you would like to ask a question, go over to that microphone, and stand at the microphone so that we can hear the question. And I don't think it would be the worst thing if you wanted, if you want to ask a question, if 2 or 3 people wanted to go stand in line there so you're ready to go, because it's a little bit of a journey getting out of the chairs. So, Peter.
Great talk. Bill, if you were Phil DeStefano, what would you change about the University of Colorado Boulder?
So, well, first of all, I would make Patty the next president. You know, and I tried when
You did,
I wrote a letter, Peter. That now that you mention that when they were looking for an interim president, I felt that Patty could have handled that role.
Well, Bruce is very lively, and so we'll we'll stick with that. But
okay.
Keep the letter. I'll just say that. Just keep the letter. So that's started. I'm not sure if that completely answers Peter's question. Or
well, I can say that higher education, and education particularly. Higher education has to change. I mean, it's too expensive. I saw in the paper yesterday where he made a little bit of a move toward making it more affordable. But technology is gonna hit our universities hard, and universities are very slow to change. So. I better stick to buildings and let Patty and Bruce take that one.
yes.
Hi, Bill. It's nice to hear a little bit about your background. My name's Darcy Kitching. I live in South Boulder. And I'm curious, I'm really interested in walkable community design and kind of neighborhood input on developments. And I'm curious that as a property developer, I'm really interested in your perspective on the role of the community in the developments that you build, particularly shopping centers and those kinds of areas. How, as a developer, do you see the role of the community in the places that you build and you develop?
Well, they're our customers. I mean, you are our customers, and we have to to build something that will attract the tenants that you will shop at, so that I can build it. And I have to go to the city to see that I can do what my tenants want me to do, and that's the conflicts that we have sometimes. So, but I go to the Urban Land Institute meetings, and we talk about the trends that are changing and how we can make our communities better. But you're right. We made some major improvements to Table Mesa. There was some functional design that we have to address. But it takes a while, and stick with us. We'll continue to try to build something you will pay money to go and visit.
Are people frightened of the microphone over there? I should think you have lots of questions. I have some more. Okay. So, I don't, oh, here goes someone to the microphone.
Bill, in regard to, and respectfully, what you've built and the team and people you've worked with, what would you say would be a central value? You talked about the lizard and flexibility and to change, but what would you say would be a kind of value statement, both maybe to your children and to your team, as you continue to build your business?
Well, you better listen to your clients. You better listen to the people that are going to spend money. So, and it's changing so fast today. Technology. The clients that we build for today, open areas, all kinds of different changes. I'm not sure I'm getting. I don't have a. I'm kind of the intuitive guy that when I see something, I'm not sure it fits into one great big solid theme. I just see a need, and gosh, that'd be fun to do. So I'm afraid that's not nice and neat, but that's kind of how I am. I don't know what I'm. Jeff's here now. He doesn't know what I'm going to do next, and neither do I.
So it sounds like maybe go ahead and take a risk if you have the intuition about it.
Well, you have to know your marketplace and timing. But yeah, I made a number of mistakes. I can tell you, Talagis isn't the only deal that I've lost money on. But I've concentrated recently in downtown Boulder. I like to think of downtown as more like 100-year properties, and some of the suburban is going to get redeveloped. So I've been concentrating in 100-year properties for whatever that means.
I guess one more, if you would like a legacy to be left, in a sense of this is what Bill did or lived like, what would be a critical point for you?
Well, I think that it would be, can my grandkids, they kind of like the money, but I'd kind of like to teach them some of these things. I have, as Patty knows, Jane has the house, but it's my barn. So as anybody that's been to the barn knows that I've got some screwy stuff there, and some of it's for the grandkids. It's got a lot of my thought process and people that I've admired, and I have a little program that's partially successful, and that is that I want my grandkids to write in the book that I gave them some of these sayings and sit down and explain to me what does it mean to them, and someday then it'll be their book and they can look back and see what they thought at 13 or 16 And so that's one of the things. That'd be more my legacy than he built that building and so forth. But I think it's more to try to help our kids and keep this great country prosperous.
Excellent, thank you.
I'm right in thinking that you, because I heard that from you and David, that you gave your kids and then I guess give the grandkids money to give to a charitable organization?
Well, we've done a little of that.
Or when they're, I mean, not vast amounts, but
Yeah.
when they're tiny, when they're,
Not a lot. That hasn't been terribly successful.
oh, is that right? Okay, well, I wondered about it,
I
because
think
I've never...
I think they'd rather keep it, you know.
Well, there you are. So, well, that's maybe premature to try to push that issue. So I'd actually, in line with your question, here is a quotation from Bill in these writings he's done, which is, I mean, this should just be on our walls everywhere. True knowledge likes disorder. Innovation gains from uncertainty. Disorder, perturbation in life should be welcomed. You will be wiser and make better decisions if you can use these uncomfortable, out of the comfort zone times to better your decisions. So that...
I'd like to see what the grandkids say about that, you know.
Yeah. But I mean, I will say, if we go back to higher education, I don't know how to characterize it, but the notion of trigger warnings and ways in which we can't make people uncomfortable, and that seems alarming to me, the notion that young people would be brought into the world and cushioned and protected, and eventually the protection and the cushion's not going to be there, and to not have had the experience of having a person who's done it say, don't flee it. If it's uncomfortable, it's getting good. It's getting really interesting now. So that doesn't seem to be the message that is dominating the airwaves now for...
What is it? If you deny an uncomfortable experience, it owns you, Brent Brown?
Yes, that's right. That's one of your quotations.
Yeah.
So. That's right. You don't want that ownership there.
So anyhow, I guess that would be my thought on my legacy. So
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing all the history. As somebody who I moved to Boulder in '92, so it was kind of a different world than what it is now even, but to hear the stories of what it was even before '92 is good. And I think the thing that I'm most interested in, I'm about to be done with a half century of living, which is coming up on Sunday, which brings me great pause. But one of the things I wonder, and actually what I appreciate about what you said, and even that quote, is that lots of people are like, yeah, my life was very organized, and I got everything done just as I thought. And it sounds as if what you're encouraging us to do is pay attention to the perturbation, pay attention to the chaos, you know, and don't discount it or send it away. And so I wonder, because you've built some good teams of people, it sounds like. So what do you think is what helps build a good team? What are some of the things that you know? I mean, part of it is, it sounds like your intuition about, hey, this person's got it. But what other things could you share with us?
well, I think your first inclination is to hire somebody like you that thinks like you, and that's absolutely the wrong thing to do. You need to get somebody that has the skills that you don't have or don't possess to their extent. So make sure that when you build your team, that you have somebody that'll stand up and say and complement your skills, and not be a clone of how you think.
Yeah, and it actually talks a little bit to what Patty was just saying, the sense of it would be great to have dissonance in team and disagreement in team in order for us to build and grow. And yet some people want to build, hey, I only want people in this mold to come into my team. And it seems like there's some depth lost there, and that's what I hear you saying too.
Well, such an opportunity for entrepreneurs in this world. We want to keep it that way. But when you deal with big business, you can see the levels of bureaucracy that they go through. I mean, it's the same at the university. It's the same at the city. It's you don't have to do that. And you can build that niche. That's where I belong. I couldn't make it at the university. I couldn't make it for a big company. They'd fire me, which he did. My father did already,
In fact, there's one of the, another quotation from his writings: seek diversity with your friends and activities. You can always learn by looking at the diverse opinions from smart people. And then a very fine quotation from Eric Hoffer: in times of rapid change, the learners inherit the world while the knowers find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists.
Eric Hoffer was a longshoreman in San Francisco.
Yep.
Great philosopher. I have a number of his.
So I guess we're coming into the closing moments here. Okay, this is not crucial, and it doesn't go for depth. But what on earth was Twice Burger? The Twice Burger.
Twice Burger.
It's-
Twin Burger.
Twin Burger, the Twin Burger.
Twin
Oh, I misread.
Burger.
That was a typo. Good Lord. This was so important, and I wrote it down wrong, and it was really important. Okay, so the Twin Burger. Could you speak about the Twin Burger and compare it to hot dogs at Costco?
Well, I'm a hot dog connoisseur, and I can tell you a little story. I've always ordered hot dogs, as Jane could tell you, and I was at the Four Seasons in Scottsdale, just really up snooty, and so they had a $14 hot dog. So I said, okay, we'll see what a $14 hot dog. It sucked. It was terrible. So I called the waitress over. I said, well, I'm going to pay for it, but let me tell you, the hot dog at Costco for $1.50 is a hell of a lot better. And it was, and it is. The hot dogs at Costco are the best.
Okay, so we don't even want to know about Twin. Well, we know nothing about Twin.
Well, the Twin Burger, if you're a real old timer, as there are a few around here, but you remember the Twin Burger on Arapahoe. That was a drive. You drove in there and you got your hamburger and Coke and smooched your girlfriend and all kinds of stuff behind the trees, and that was the Twin Burger.
What a story.
Yeah.
Costco doesn't have those other qualities to it. Or maybe it does, and I'm looking in the wrong direction. Okay. Well, alrighty. So now we're going to two last questions, and one of them is the survival value of humor, and maybe in particular ways the survival value of that living in Boulder, that things get taken very seriously sometimes, a lot of the time, and humor can turn that in better directions. So I'm wondering, this is a funny place to practice this, but Ruth Wright will be up next month. So could humor help in the cause of finding a productive way to appraise the city's limits on building heights? And my first run myself would be, you have to find it a little bit funny that an environmentally oriented policy, a preserve the open view of the open spaces, an environmentally oriented policy encourages sprawl and forestalls opportunities to use density for lower environmental impact and more concentrated, more efficient natural resource use. So that's a little bit funny.
Are you going to interview Ruth Wright?
This may be the end of my interviewing career this evening. I don't know. I love interviewing. And I love Ruth Wright, so sure.
Who's going to interview Ruth Wright? So I think humor, Patty, I've learned so much from you. You are able to take humor and diffuse these strong emotions of the religion and politics. And people are people, and humor is so important, and you've taught me that. So I would say that we ought to be able to laugh at the most serious things.
This calls for my fracking limerick, which is universally loved, which as you know, there are issues about local control and state and federal authority and all this. Okay, so knowledge is tragically lacking on the complicated subject of fracking. Convinced they are right, people rush in to fight, and no agency regulates yakking. So now, shifting to the closing question, okay, so people have said that the United States has had some history as a death ignoring, or a nation where thinking about the fact that we are very temporary on this planet and that our vigor and our ingenuity all comes with a time limit. In your writings, you have been very forthright about saying, you know you're not exempt from that. You know that there is a lifespan, and there's no exemption from moving from birth to the conclusion of life. You're very direct about that. I would say it's pretty rare to find people who are so able just to face that and to be guided by it and to retain vitality and vigor and hope and cheer, but to maybe have those deepened by that awareness. So especially writing to your grandchildren, and so you're not evading, you're not escaping, you're not pretending that it will just keep going on and on. So could you just, were you like that over many years? Is that something that's just been...
It just pops out, you know, it just, hell, I don't know. Patty, I'm having a great ride, and I think we owe it to our kids to help them understand what built this country, and that's why I named, you know, my dog. We had a discussion on the name of our dog, and Jane and I were talking in the car because I insisted when Belle died that we get a new dog. So we were going down and picking up the dog, and so we had a discussion. And anyhow, she mentioned Jefferson, and so I said Thomas Jefferson, one of my, you know, one of the great men in our history. So anyhow, Thomas Jefferson is the name of our dog. So that I evaded your question.
Well, you certainly did, which is its own sign of extreme vitality and robust humor and so on. Because why not evade my question? For heaven's sake, so many others have tried and not done it with anywhere near the success that you have done that. So, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to join me in a standing ovation here.
Thank you.